Have you ever felt like you were living in two worlds at the same time? The world outside and the world inside your head. Outside, people laugh, walk, live, argue, love, and keep moving forward. Inside, your mind replays old conversations, imagines future disasters, analyzes every emotion, and questions your own worth. You're here physically, but mentally you're somewhere else. And the strangest part, no one taught you how to escape that inner world. No one taught you how to step out of the prison built inside your own thoughts. But Nietzsche did. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll hear one truth he believed every human must discover, a truth that can make your mind finally become quiet again. Let's begin. There's a moment in life when you realize the real battle was never with other people. It was always with the voice in your mind. That voice that narrates your entire existence. That voice that judges, predicts, doubts, fears, and replays. Most people fight that voice every single day, not knowing it's the very fight that keeps them trapped. Nietzsche once said, something most people never fully understand. The greatest weight you carry is the weight of your own thoughts. But what if the weight was never truly yours? What if the voice you've been fighting is not even you? You might think your suffering comes from your problems, your past, or the people around you. But Nietzsche would tell you this: you suffer not from the world, but from the stories your mind tells about the world. Think about that. Two people can go through the same moment, a rejection, a failure, a conflict, and feel completely different. Why? Because the event is not the pain. The interpretation is. And who interprets everything? The voice in your head. The one you think is you. The one you've trusted your entire life. The one that has been narrating every moment like an anxious storyteller who doesn't know how to be quiet. But here's what Nietzsche understood far earlier than modern psychology ever did: you are not the voice. You are the one who hears it. And that simple realization is the beginning of inner peace. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. There's something you need to understand first, something almost no one ever told you. And I promise what I'm about to say will make the rest of this video hit much deeper. Section 1. The people who live peacefully are not stronger than you. They're just less identified with their mind. You know those people who seem unbothered. They're steady, calm. They're not drowning in overthinking. They're not chasing approval. They're not replaying something said 3 days ago. You look at them and think, how do they do that? Why can't I be like that? Here's what they're not telling you: they have thoughts too. They have doubts, worries, and mental noise. The difference? They don't believe everything their mind says. They treat their thoughts like weather, something that comes and goes. But you treat your thoughts like laws, like fate, like absolute truth. Not because you're weak, but because no one ever taught you otherwise. Your mind learned to speak long before you learned to question it. You inherited its habits, its fears, its interpretations and survival instincts. You assumed the voice in your head was you. But Nietzsche would look you in the eye and say, your mind is not your master. Not unless you kneel to it. And you've been kneeling without even knowing it. But don't worry. After watching this video, you'll never see your thoughts the same way again. Section 2. The voice in your head is a survival machine, not a truth teller. Most people live their entire lives in the illusion that thinking equals truth. But Nietzsche would tell you thinking equals survival. Your mind was designed to keep you safe, not happy, not peaceful, not free. That's why it replays every embarrassing moment, creates imaginary worst-case scenarios, predicts disaster even when things are fine, analyzes messages, looks, tones, expressions, rehearses conversations that may never happen. Your mind is preparing for threats that don't exist, because that's all it knows how to do. Your mind's job is not to give you peace. Its job is to prepare you for danger. So it never stops talking. That's why when you're quiet, it gets louder. That's why when life is calm, it creates problems. That's why when nothing is wrong, it tells you something might be. And here's the truth you weren't expecting. Your mind isn't trying to torture you. It's trying to protect you. It's just very bad at its job. But once you understand this, something profound happens. You stop taking the voice so seriously. And when that happens, your entire emotional world starts to shift. Section 3. You live in your mind because you want to avoid the problem. Most people think overthinking is a thinking problem. It's not. It's an avoidance problem. You're not trapped in your thoughts because your mind is loud. You're trapped there because your emotions feel unsafe. So instead of feeling, you analyze. Instead of experiencing, you explain. Instead of releasing, you replay. Thinking becomes a shield, a distraction, a hiding place. Nietzsche understood this deeply. Thoughts are the refuge of those who fear their own depths. Read that again. Let it sink in. You live in your head because the world in your body, your emotions, feels too overwhelming. So you escape upward. Your mind becomes a shelter, a cage, a world where you feel like you're in control. But the irony, the more you try to control your inner world, the more controlled you become by it. And this is the tragedy of modern life. But don't worry, because in the next point, Nietzsche gives you a way out. A way no one ever told you before. If you stay, you'll hear the part most people never reach. Section 4. You are not the voice. You are the one who sees the voice. This is where the shift happens. The moment everything in your inner world rearranges. Because when you truly see this distinction, not just hear it, your mind loses its control over you. Let me ask you something simple. Right now, as you listen to this, you hear a voice in your mind commenting, right? Maybe agreeing, maybe doubting, maybe planning what to do after this video. Now ask yourself, who is hearing that voice? Who is noticing the thought? If you can observe something, you cannot be the thing you observe. The watcher is never the object. The awareness is never the thought. You are the watcher. You are the awareness. And the voice? It is just noise. It is the weather of the mind, always changing, never truly you. Nietzsche said, "The self is not the sum of its thoughts. The self is the silent witness behind them." Once you understand this, you gain the greatest freedom a human can have. The freedom to choose which thoughts deserve your attention. This right here is where suffering begins to collapse. Section 5. The pain you feel isn't reality. It's a story your mind invented. Most people believe their suffering comes from life itself. But Nietzsche would tell you something far more uncomfortable. Your suffering is not born from reality. It's born from your interpretation of reality. Think about how much of your pain comes from things that are not even happening. Imagined futures, misread expressions, stories you created about what they must be thinking, assumptions based on insecurity, analyzing harmless moments until they turn into threats, replaying old mistakes that no longer exist anywhere but in your memory. Your mind creates meaning even where nothing meaningful exists. And because you believe that inner narration, you end up reacting emotionally to illusions. So you feel anxiety about disasters your mind invented, shame from moments that ended years ago, fear of scenarios that will never happen, hurt from interpretations that were never true. You live in an emotional world separate from reality, a world built by your mind's storytelling. As Nietzsche said, we suffer more in imagination than in truth. But here's the part people misunderstand. The problem isn't the existence of these thoughts. The real issue is how tightly you cling to them. And this leads us into the deeper truth, the one most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Section 6. The mind is not your enemy. Your attachment to it is. When the mind becomes loud, most people respond by fighting it. They argue with their thoughts. They try to silence them. They try to replace them with positive thinking. They resist their own inner world, as if resistance itself were a path to peace. But Nietzsche understood something the modern world still overlooks. What you resist persists. When you fight the voice in your head, you strengthen it. When you argue with it, you validate it. When you try to suppress it, you feed it more attention. The mind grows powerful not because it is inherently strong, but because you treat it as if it is. The less seriously you take your thoughts, the less power they have. Peace does not come from forcing the mind into silence. Peace comes from no longer obeying every story it tells. And this right here is the threshold of true psychological freedom. But now we reach the moment most people never get to hear. The breakthrough that challenges everything you've believed about yourself, your suffering, and the way your mind works. There's something you need to hear, and almost nobody in your life has been honest enough to say it. Your mind isn't broken, it's overwhelmed. Nietzsche once wrote that the world is deep, deeper than Day had thought. But what he didn't need to say, because you already feel it, is that your inner world can be even deeper than that. You think you're struggling because things around you are too complicated. But the real tension is happening inside. You're carrying too many unsaid things, too many unfinished emotions, too many quiet storms. And yet, the people who seem calm, grounded, unfazed, they aren't calmer because life handed them a better deck. They're calmer because they aren't fighting inside their own head every single minute. They learned something you never learned, something I'll tell you about in a moment. But first, let's be honest, you've spent years trying to keep the peace around you, but you've never known how to keep the peace within you. You've been trying to manage external chaos while silently drowning in internal noise. And here's the twist you didn't see coming. The moment you stop battling yourself, the world stops feeling like an enemy. Section 7. Why you feel disconnected from yourself, and how you quietly betray your own soul. Have you ever felt this strange emptiness? You're surrounded by people, talking, laughing, moving through life, yet inside, you feel like a ghost in your own story. You're doing everything right, checking every box, meeting every expectation, yet something essential feels missing. You wake up, live your day, go to sleep, but you can't shake the feeling that you're not really living, just existing. Nietzsche believed this disconnection isn't caused by pain but by noise. The world becomes too loud, too many opinions telling you who to be, too many comparisons telling you what you lack, too many expectations pulling you in directions that feel nothing like yourself, too many moments where you bend, shrink, or hide just to be accepted. And slowly something inside you goes quiet, not the peaceful quiet of stillness, but the sad quiet of self-abandonment. So you retreat into your mind. You replay old conversations because the present feels unfamiliar. You analyze yourself because you don't trust your instincts anymore. You begin living in thoughts because living in your own skin feels unsafe. But here's the truth nobody ever taught you. You didn't disconnect from yourself. You were never taught how to stay connected in the first place. The world taught you how to please others. It taught you how to survive. It taught you how to perform, adapt, behave, endure. But it never taught you how to be with yourself quietly, gently, honestly. You're not lost. You're just a stranger in your own home, a home you were never shown how to return to. And that's where the most subtle form of suffering begins. Every time you silence what you feel, every time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, every time you let the voice in your head shame you, criticize you, or belittle you, you betray yourself. Not in dramatic ways, not in explosive ways, but in the small, quiet, invisible ways that slowly drain your spirit. You betray yourself when you apologize for things that weren't your fault. You betray yourself when you pretend you're fine so others don't feel uncomfortable. You betray yourself when you abandon your own needs to meet expectations that were never yours to carry. Nietzsche saw this long before psychology did. The worst enemy you can meet will always be yourself. But he didn't mean you are your own enemy because you are flawed. He meant you become your own enemy when you let the loudest voice in your head dominate you, even when that voice is cruel, wrong, or borrowed from someone who hurt you. Here's the painful twist. Self-betrayal never feels like betrayal while it's happening. It feels like being reasonable. It feels like being strong. It feels like being the bigger person. Only later, the resentment, the exhaustion, the numbness, the quiet despair that is the bill you pay for abandoning yourself. And you've been paying it for years. But Nietzsche believes something deeply hopeful. The moment you stop betraying yourself, you stop suffering inside yourself. You come back to the person you were always meant to be, the one who was buried beneath noise, fear, and expectations. And everything in your life begins to shift. Section 8. The hidden strength you haven't used yet. You are far stronger than the noise inside your head. You may not feel it every day, but your life already proves it. You've survived fears you never spoke about. You've carried struggles no one ever saw. You've endured moments that would have broken another person. And Nietzsche would tell you this. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. The problem is never your weakness. The problem is that you've forgotten your why. You've allowed the loudest voice in your mind to replace the deepest truth in your heart. Because here's what most people never realize. Those who seem peaceful aren't the ones who had less pain. They simply stopped letting pain narrate their story. They learned to hear the noise without obeying it. And this inner shift leads to a moment subtle but life-changing. When something inside you finally turns around, there comes a moment when you realize your thoughts aren't truth. Your fears aren't destiny. Your past isn't a prison. Your mind isn't your master. Imagine if every painful belief, every insecurity, every fear was nothing more than mental noise. Just echoes, just memories, just old survival patterns pretending to be wisdom. And you, the real you, was always the quiet one behind the noise. When this truth hits you, you feel it. And in that moment, the voice stops being a tyrant and becomes background sound. Still there, but not important. That's what freedom feels like. Not victory, not control, just space. You're allowed to become unavailable to noise and emotional turbulence. You're allowed to stop responding to drama. To stop internalizing opinions. To stop carrying responsibility for everyone's feelings. Real strength, Nietzsche believed, is staying centered when everything tries to pull you off balance. Calm people aren't detached, they're selective. Selective with attention, with energy, with access to their inner world. You don't need to fix your mind to be peaceful. You need to stop giving every thought access. If you're still here, it tells me something important. You're awakening. You're beginning to see yourself the way Nietzsche hoped. Not as a victim of your mind, but as the observer of it. Your mind will keep talking, that's its nature. But you won't keep suffering, that's your choice. This journey you're on, it's a return, a coming home, a quiet revolution inside your consciousness. Because you deserve a life where your mind is not your enemy. You deserve a life where peace isn't rare but natural. You deserve a self that finally feels like home. If this message touched you, if you felt even one moment of clarity, I invite you to like this video, subscribe, and join thousands of others who are choosing awareness over noise, strength over fear, and inner freedom over mental chaos. Your journey isn't ending here. It's just beginning.